Welcome back to the channel, everyone, and today we're going deep into the life of one of the most fascinating men ever to appear on television. A man who became a symbol of courage, strength, and morality in the golden age of TV westerns, Chuck Connors, the unforgettable star of The Rifleman, and while most people remember him as Lucas McCain, the stoic, rifle-wielding widower who raised his son while fighting off outlaws in the dusty town of North Fork, what many fans don't realize is that behind the camera, Chuck Connors was a man full of hidden stories, surprises, and secrets that most never heard until long after his show left the airwaves. So buckle up as we take a long, engaging journey into the rise, the fame, the struggles, and the truly surprising hidden side of Chuck Connors, because the man behind Lucas McCain was far more complex, fascinating, and shocking than you may have ever imagined. To start, let's talk about his size and presence, because Chuck Connors wasn't just a regular actor who lucked into a role. He was a towering figure standing an incredible 6 feet 6 inches tall, that's 198 centimeters, with an athletic build weighing in at around 210 pounds in his prime. And it's no exaggeration to say that his commanding frame gave him an edge, both in sports and later in Hollywood, because before he ever picked up a rifle on screen, Connors was chasing an entirely different dream, a career in professional sports. And here's where one of his first big secrets lies. Chuck Connors was one of the very few men in history to play both professional basketball and professional baseball, something that almost no one else has accomplished. And he didn't just dabble. He played for the Boston Celtics in the NBA and later suited up for both the Brooklyn Dodgers and the Chicago Cubs in Major League Baseball. So while audiences later admired him for his quick draw and cowboy toughness, in reality, he was once sprinting across basketball courts and swinging bats at Major League pitches, a fact that still amazes fans who discover it today. But here's where the twist comes in. While he had the height, strength, and determination, his sports career never quite delivered the fame or financial stability he hoped for. And so after years of pushing through the grind, he eventually had to accept that professional sports wouldn't sustain him long term. And that moment of disappointment opened the door to Hollywood, though at the time, he never imagined it would lead him to immortality on the small screen. When Connors first entered Hollywood, casting directors didn't always know what to do with him, because while he had the height and rugged look, he wasn't a classically trained actor, and his size alone made him stand out in ways that weren't always useful, as he often got typecast as a background heavy, a guard, or a tough guy. But fate had other plans, because in 1958, everything changed when he was offered the role of Lucas McCain in The Rifleman. And what's fascinating is that at first, Connors was hesitant about the part, unsure if a TV Western would truly make an impact. But little did he know that this single role would not only define his career, but turn him into a television legend. The Rifleman premiered in 1958 and instantly stood out from the dozens of Westerns on TV at the time, because while other shows focused on shootouts, cattle drives, or generic good versus evil plots, The Rifleman centered on something more relatable and emotional: the bond between a father and his son, Lucas, and Mark McCain, played by Johnny Crawford. And it was that dynamic, mixed with Lucas's signature modified Winchester Model 1892 rifle, that could rapid fire with a flick of his wrist, that made the show a hit. And Chuck Connors, with his booming voice, steely eyes, and towering presence, made it all feel real, as if Lucas McCain wasn't just a character, but a living, breathing man who stood for justice, decency, and moral courage. But here's another hidden secret. Those incredible rifle tricks and smooth moves that became his signature weren't easy at all. Connors had to train extensively with that weapon to make it look effortless, because the modified rifle was not a prop that anyone could just pick up and handle. It required precision, speed, and a ton of practice. And his years as a professional athlete gave him the coordination to master it. So in a sense, all the years of basketball drills and baseball swings were preparing him for this defining moment in front of the camera. But here's where the story takes a turn. Because while Lucas McCain was the ultimate father figure on television, a widower raising his son with integrity, fairness, and compassion, Chuck Connors' real life was not nearly as simple or as idealized, and some of the secrets of his personal life show a man who struggled behind closed doors. Connors was married 3 times, and though he had 4 sons, Jeff, Kevin, Steve, and Mike, with his first wife, Elizabeth Riddell, whom he married in 1948, the marriage ended in divorce in 1961, just a few years into the success of The Rifleman. His second marriage to actress Kamala Devi, whom he met on the set of Geronimo, lasted until 1973. And his third, to Faith Quabius, ended by the late 1970s, meaning that while Lucas McCain became a symbol of family values on TV, Chuck Connors himself faced the heartbreak of multiple divorces and complicated relationships. His children later admitted that being raised in the shadow of such a larger-than-life father wasn't easy, because the world saw him as a hero. But at home, he was a man wrestling with fame, pressure, and the difficulty of balancing Hollywood with family. Now let's dig into another one of his secrets, one that most fans of the Rifleman never realized. Chuck Connors was not only a television cowboy, but also a man with deep political connections, and his friendships reached into some of the most unexpected places, including the world stage. Connors was a staunch supporter of Richard Nixon and Ronald Reagan, and his celebrity status often brought him into political circles. But the most surprising moment came in 1973, when he met Soviet leader Leonid Brezhnev at a time when the Cold War had the United States and the Soviet Union locked in global tension. Incredibly, Connors and Brezhnev struck up a friendly rapport, and Connors even presented him with a pair of Colt revolvers as a gesture of goodwill, a moment that was photographed and reported around the world. Imagine that, the same man fans, associated with the fictional town of North Fork, was suddenly at the center of Cold War diplomacy, shaking hands with world leaders and offering gifts that carried symbolic weight. This unexpected chapter in his life is one of the biggest examples of how Chuck Connors' world went far beyond the television screen, and it shows just how unique his life really was. But for all the fame, all the politics, and all the career highlights, Connors also carried struggles that weighed heavily on him, particularly after The Rifleman ended in 1963. The show had run for 5 strong seasons with 168 episodes, cementing itself as one of the greatest westerns in TV history. But when it wrapped, Connors faced the harsh reality of being typecast. Audiences loved him as Lucas McCain, but that love made it hard for them to accept him in other roles. And though he starred in shows like Branded, Arrest and Trial, and Cowboy in Africa, as well as appearing in films such as the dystopian sci-fi classic Soylent Green in 1973, he could never fully escape the shadow of the Rifleman. This was both a blessing and a curse, because while the role gave him everlasting fame, it also limited his ability to be seen as a versatile actor. Still, Connors embraced his legacy with time, and he remained proud of the fact that Lucas McCain was remembered so fondly. Behind the scenes, though, there were even more hidden truths, such as his reputation in Hollywood as both a gentleman and, at times, a man with a fiery temper depending on who you asked. He was fiercely competitive, a trait left over from his sports days, and he often brought that intensity onto the set. Some co-stars spoke about how he could be warm, charismatic, and supportive, while others noted that he carried himself with a toughness that made him intimidating. And of course, his personal charm extended beyond Hollywood too, as Connors was known for his relationships with various women over the years, a side of his life that contrasted with his television image as the loyal widower rancher. Sadly, Connors' story took its final chapter in 1992, when he passed away at the age of 71 from lung cancer, a disease that had been linked to his years of smoking. His death marked the end of an era, but his legacy lives on in reruns of The Rifleman, in the memories of fans who grew up watching him, and in the unique place he carved out in American culture as both a professional athlete and a television icon. His life was filled with accomplishments that few could match. Playing in the NBA, playing in Major League Baseball, becoming a household name on television, shaking hands with world leaders, and leaving behind a character that still resonates with audiences decades later. But perhaps the most powerful hidden truth about Chuck Connors is this: behind the hero, behind the rifle, behind the legend, was a man who faced struggles, heartbreak, and challenges just like anyone else. A man whose life reminds us that our heroes on screen are human too, and that the stories they leave behind are always more layered than they first appear. And so when you look back at the Rifleman and remember Lucas McCain standing tall, rifle in hand, defending justice in North Fork, remember that the man who brought him to life was not just an actor reading lines, he was Chuck Connors, a real-life giant, athlete, husband, father, political figure, and above all, a man whose hidden secret